Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. Let's talk about Microsoft's press conference at E3 2015. Over the next few days, I'll be running through most of the major press conferences with rundowns, thoughts, opinions, and so on and so forth. Something of a digest or something along those lines, whatever the case. So let's talk about what they had to say, or indeed what they didn't have to say. You know, I recall saying this last year, and it's even more true this year. Where the hell did the Kinect go? Can someone explain that? I mean, we appear to have forgotten that it exists, and indeed, the only functionality that we saw on display was the good old Xbox talkie-talkie thing. Were there any games demonstrating Kinect functionality? Nope, not at all. Was there even a mention of the Kinect? I don't recall a single one. None whatsoever. That has got to be one of the most insane acts of disownment that I've ever seen when it comes to an expensive piece of technology that you are riding upon up to the release of your machine. I mean, the Xbox One came with the Kinect initially. Now there's an SKU that doesn't, and indeed that seems to be the one that's selling the most, but it just seems to be a massive 180 from Microsoft, and a really ridiculous abandonment of some kind of nice tech. Now, I was hardly the only person to notice this, and in various interviews, it's been stated that there are Kinect games in the works internally at Microsoft Studios, but they're not talking about them at all, which is kind of bizarre. I'm not exactly convinced by the Kinect, I never was. It's just kind of sad to see a piece of technology abandoned in such a way, and indeed it's the one thing that really made Xbox One unique in comparison to PlayStation 4, and well, now it's just a slightly less powerful PlayStation 4, which is a little bit of a problem, I think, and now it's going to come down to who has the most exclusives, and you know I hate that. It's not that I don't own both of the consoles, I do, but I think it sucks for people that want to experience the best that gaming has to offer. The more exclusives these machines have, the worse it gets for people. Also, absolutely no mention of any new Xbox functionality through the dashboard, no mention of anything multimedia related. It was all games, 100% games this time around. So, I suppose I can appreciate that. I mean, it is E3 after all, so that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in. It's just, again, very strange to see such a change in attitude from Microsoft, but it's probably what they need to compete, honestly. Okay, well, let's talk about the games that they actually showed. They kicked it off with Halo 5 Guardians, which shouldn't really surprise too many people. They showed some gameplay of the single player, which looked okay. I mean, it seems to be mostly based on this idea of verticality, so there's quite a lot of jetpacking around the place. Outside of that, the gunplay looks very similar to other Halo games, and you run around with a squad. You can play as either Master Chief or some other Spartan. I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about Halo. But perhaps one of the most interesting things that they showed was Warzone, which is a multiplayer game mode which also includes the capturing of bases and the elimination of computer-controlled opponents. So you've got a mixture of PvP and player versus environment. They call it player versus everything, which is, I suppose, kind of cute. A neat idea, and you can work your way up through various weapons using requisition terminals that you capture at these bases, and it's interesting to see, I suppose, a combination of Tribes-esque gameplay elements with something like Titanfall. That seems to be the idea there, the mishmash, when it comes to the mechanics and design philosophies. Doesn't look too bad, but ultimately it is a Halo game, and if we don't get it on PC, I personally have no interest in it, as you're well aware. Can't stand controlling FPS with a controller. It's just not the thing I can do, I'm sorry. They then moved on to show an Xbox One exclusive by the name of Recore. There was no gameplay being showed there. It was simply a CGI trailer. We don't know much about it, other than the fact that it has a female protagonist who has the ability to take these blue glowing cores and swap them between various mechanical bodies. So she starts off with this kind of pet dog thing, and invariably, as it does to pull the heartstrings in every video game ever, they kill the dog. But then a few seconds later, she takes the core, puts it into this sort of bigger dog-like thing, and then it comes back to life. It's wonderful, and everyone's happy, and so on and so forth. No idea what's going on with that one. It is a game by Keiji Inafune, who is responsible for a hell of a lot of Mega Man, as well as Dead Rising. So we'll see whether or not that ends up being any good. Honestly, there's not much to say because there's no gameplay available, but it's nice to see some new IP regardless. Alright, moving on to what is perhaps the biggest piece of news coming out of that show, which is backwards compatibility for Xbox One. So this is done not so much in the same way that the Xbox 360 did it, but it is done in a way that is not pure backwards compatibility. Remember the way that the old PlayStation 3s used to do backwards compatibility? They actually had PlayStation 2's chip in the machine itself in order to run the discs. Well, it's not done that way. It uses the disc to verify that you own the game, and then it downloads a repackaged version. So it's sort of like a port. It's interesting to see them come out with this in 2015. This is the sort of thing that would have certainly given them a kickstart when it came to launching the machine, but at this point, if people are still interested in Xbox 360 games, they probably still own their Xbox 360, and if they're not, well, then it's not suddenly going to find interest in it now. That's what really confuses me about the timing of the announcement more so than anything. It's not that it's bad. I'm a little disappointed that apparently the games will run in exactly the same manner as they did on Xbox 360. They demonstrated Mass Effect, which was maybe one of the poorest possible choices, because that game is pretty legendary for not running that well on that system. I mean, it had a lot of frame drops, and you could see it in the demonstration as well, and I really can't imagine why you'd want to go back and play that. There's going to be a limited selection of these things available on launch, and they're going to be rolling out more games as they go. So some of the more obscure titles, well, chances are you might not get to play them, which is unfortunate because there are some rather interesting games available on 360 that are perhaps not going to be represented there. It's nice to have, you know, it's a value add, there's no doubt about that. I just think the way that they're doing it is a little bit late. And I would really like to see them actually take advantage of the Xbox One's power. And they're not doing that. They said, yes, it'll take advantage of the Xbox One. As in, you can do Snap and use Kinect functionality. Right, okay. Well, what about the processing power? What about making those games run a little bit quicker? That'll be an idea, but apparently that's not a thing. So that seems to be completely missing a trick there as far as I'm concerned. They did say that they will not charge you for games that you already own, which is nice. I'm certainly not going to dispute that one. Like I said, it's just kind of a lukewarm announcement, in my honest opinion. It would have been incredible back when this thing first came out. And I suppose the situation is now that it's competing with PlayStation now, which is Sony's solution to this problem, which is, look, we're just going to stream them. So I wonder who's going to get the best selection of games coming out there. I'm not going to quibble, though. I prefer the Xbox One's implementation over this cloud streaming nonsense because, as you're well aware, latency and potential connection problems and all sorts of things like that, not to mention their ridiculous rental system whose price tags are all over the place. Well, I certainly prefer the way the Xbox is doing it. Alright, so moving on to a new controller. It's called the Xbox One Wireless Elite. It's $150, which is pretty damn expensive. It comes with a lot of customization. You can swap out various components. You can remap buttons. Yes, indeed, you have to pay $150 to remap buttons on a bloody console. Why is that not a standard feature? It can't be that hard to implement, really. It couldn't be. Surely you could just rebind a lot of that stuff through the dashboard. Apparently not, though. It's got paddles on the back. It's actually quite similar to a SCUF modified controller, and I imagine it's going to be pretty popular amongst those who are hardcore into Xbox Live and, of course, those involved in the esports scene. It will be compatible with Windows 10 as well, although I have to say that I'm not sure it's going to be enough of an improvement for me to justify grabbing it. It does have a reasonably interesting D-pad. I have to wonder if that's going to make something like Killer Instinct easier to play, because for some reason the D-pad on the Xbox One gave me hand cramps, so maybe that one will work better. That said, though, of course, Killer Instinct has also been announced for the PC now, so I guess that's no longer an issue. I can just use whatever controller I want. Great, sounds good to me. It's actually yet another reason not to really own an Xbox One. Moving on to Fallout 4, not a great deal of stuff shown here. Of course, the Bethesda conference happened, and they showed us a great deal more of the game there. Outside of the dog functionality, there wasn't really a lot shown here that was particularly exciting, and it's not that Fallout 4 doesn't have interesting features, it does. I mean, the idea of building a settlement to me is fantastic. That sounds absolutely wonderful. That's the sort of thing that only modding could bring you in previous games, so I'm really quite happy about that. That's going to put an interesting spin on things, but what they showed at the Microsoft conference seemed like the leftovers, and they showed the Prime stuff at the Bethesda conference. So it felt a little bit weird for them to be on stage in the first place because they were following up what they'd already done with something that wasn't as impressive. That's why it really confuses me when we see multi-platform titles appear on stage, especially along with people from the studio that's making them, to shill for whatever console happens to be there. It's like, yeah, Xbox. And PC, and PlayStation 4. Yeah, I mean... Okay, yes, it's a little odd. They did announce mod support for Xbox One, which is really quite interesting. I assume they're going to curate this, and I have to wonder if this had anything to do with the whole Steam paid mods thing. I can't imagine that Bethesda weren't at least considering it. They launched with Skyrim, and of course it was gone after 24 hours because people bloody hated it. But it would make sense that they were looking to curate a selection of decent paid mods that they could then sell to people on Xbox One. I imagine they will probably do something like that. I mean, if they get the opportunity. It seems like Xbox One is a prime place to sell mods to gamers because, honestly, they're not used to even having access to them if they happen to be a console gamer. So it's a much easier sell than to somebody who's been enjoying free mods for over a decade. It might happen. They did say the service was free, at least for the time being, so maybe that's something they'll push later on. Maybe I'm just being too cynical. Maybe they just will allow it to be free, which is great. I mean, that's fantastic. I'm not going to feel salty about that. It's awesome that we can expose other gamers to the creativity of mods, and that's fantastic. It promotes the long tail when it comes to video games, and I think that's healthy. Now, yearly franchises, maybe not so much. It's nice to have a game which a studio really invests in and then supports long term, and modding does help that happen. It's consumer friendly as well. I mean, getting more out of the games that you bought. How could anyone object to that? We then had EA Access. Yeah, okay. I don't know anyone that's excited about EA Access. I mean, it's been out for a while, and it's essentially an EA service which gives you access to, say, earlier betas, a few discounts, and sometimes some free games. It's not a bad service. I mean, it's decent value. They announced that Titanfall's going to be on the service. In fact, it's available right now, and they're going to be bringing Dragon Age Inquisition to it for what's essentially $5 a month. It's a PlayStation Plus style service that only Xbox has access to because they forged some kind of exclusivity deal. I would like access to it on PC, honestly. I think that for some people it would be good value. Not for me, but it would be nice to have that particular choice. I mean, Dragon Age Inquisition for $5 a month, yeah, I mean, I could see that being reasonable. It is not an awful idea. Unfortunately, EA didn't really have too much exciting to say outside of the reveal for Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2, in which case the zombies are fighting the plants rather than the other way around. You play as various kinds of zombies. It looked fun, don't get me wrong. I mean, Garden Warfare was a good game, so I expect this to be as well, as long as they don't run it into the ground. Next up, the insufferable Forza 6. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Could we advertise forward any harder? But there is one thing that I would like to point out that is good. Yeah, everything else, I mean, I don't care about Forza, I never have. And of course, the shilling for Ford was pretty obnoxious. But there was one thing that I noticed that I think is a good switch in attitude, particularly for Microsoft. They advertised 1080p 60 as a prominent feature of the game. This is a good thing. Any developer that does this is essentially firmly rejecting the narrative that somehow 30 FPS can be better and more cinematic and it's actually a feature. This is clearly saying this is better. It's putting a line in the sand and saying 30 FPS, 60 FPS. 60 FPS, objectively better. So good, we're putting it in our trailer. Now, of course, for a PC gamer, you'd probably scoff at this and say, well, of course, 60 FPS. But it's good that developers, particularly first-party developers, are turning around and valuing that and are publicly saying, look, this is important, because hopefully that means we get more of that later on in the console's lifespan. Which is good for me, because it means I might actually use my console from time to time. We then got a CGI trailer for Dark Souls 3. I imagine that some people have already dissected this damn thing to Kingdom Come. Personally, I'm waiting to see the gameplay. That's all I really care about, and I have to wonder whether after Bloodborne it's actually going to be all that appealing. I think Bloodborne took something of a different approach to the Souls-like genre, as I suppose some people are calling it these days. Dark Souls 3, well, some people were already disappointed by Dark Souls 2, so how exactly are they going to resolve that, I wonder? We will find out. There were rumors that it would focus on co-op gameplay, which seems like it would completely ruin everything. There are a few things we do know that weren't actually announced at the Microsoft conference. For instance, that each weapon type will actually have specific mechanics that will be special to that weapon. So it's going to make things feel a little bit more personalized, and you can choose a particular combat style as opposed to just grabbing a weapon and swinging away with it. There's going to be specific things that you can do only with certain weapons, which I find to be a fairly interesting idea. Outside of that, though, we're just going to have to wait and see when it comes to Dark Souls 3. I have to wonder how long they're going to drag that series on before they decide to take it to another world and do something a little bit different. Although I suppose that's what Bloodborne was, really. After that, we got a little bit of The Division. Didn't really see a huge amount of gameplay that we haven't already seen. There appears to be gunsmen, guns, and gunsmen. So that's not that thrilling. That game, I don't know, it's been floating around for so long that I think I've lost any enthusiasm for it, and I'm a little bit worried that it's just going to end up being another Destiny, another bloody looter shooter. So that's a concern. I mean, there were rumors of things like legendary weapons and so on and so forth, and there's dungeon crawling involved in that as well, and that can get a little bit tedious, as we saw with Destiny. So we'll see. It looks like the game's been downgraded a little bit, but I don't know if that footage came from a PC, so maybe that's just not going to be too much of a factor there. I'll talk a little bit more about The Division when I've watched the Ubisoft conference. I haven't got around to that yet, but they did announce that the Division beta would be available first in December on Xbox One. That's been a common theme. I've got to say Microsoft is less guilty of this than Sony. When I get onto Sony's press conference, yeah, they're going to get lambasted for that. They've done so much when it comes to exclusive this, exclusive that. Microsoft didn't really push that too much, so I appreciate that, but that was one of the instances where they said, yep, you can get this exclusively here. So there you go. They moved on to Rainbow Six Siege. Again, it's an Ubisoft title. This still looks good. I mean, the alpha had mixed responses. There were a bunch of problems with it, including the way that the weapons handled. So I certainly hope that that's been improved. Weapon handling, of course, is pretty key to a Rainbow Six game, since at least the first 3 games were very realistic. So it would be unfortunate if they had ruined the weapon modeling. So hopefully they won't. But I love the idea of this 5 versus 5 asymmetric attack and defense gameplay, especially with the destructible environments. It sounds potentially fantastic. I just hope they don't bugger it up. You're also going to be getting Rainbow Six Vegas and Vegas 2 if you buy it on Xbox One, and that'll run through the backwards compatibility system, so it's going to run like it did on 360. They also showed Gigantic, which is a Windows 10 game as well as an Xbox One game. It will be free to play. It is Dota style in some way. I haven't had a chance to get my hands on that one yet. It looks like maybe it innovates just a little bit. It's something of a third-person shooter. It is a bit like Smite, as far as I can see, but it seems like it's focused on actual third-person shooter elements, as opposed to Smite, which is really just a third-person game. And it plays more like World of Warcraft, more so than anything else. We then got a bunch of Xbox Live indie titles, most of which, of course, will actually be on PC. So, really not a huge amount to say there. Although they showed a bunch of Cuphead. Oh god, that game looks great. Absolutely phenomenal looking game. Just beautiful. The art style, the aesthetic for that game, the 1930s style cartoon, it just looks unbelievably authentic. It's a platformer, and it looks like a pretty difficult one as well, so I'm going to struggle through that one. Solely just to look at things like the boss design, because they're all so very, very creative and interesting. So I was really impressed by that one. They also announced an exclusive game, Ashen, which is an adventure co-op game, and they showed a trailer for Tacoma, which is by the Gone Home developers. Now, of course, we already knew about Tacoma because it was announced at the Game Awards last year, and it appears to be some sort of sci-fi exploration narrative experience. Looks a little bit like BioShock, actually. I think a lot of people probably made that comment because there's quite a lot of Art Nouveau design involved in it. We don't really know much about the gameplay, though, or the mechanics, assuming it actually has any mechanics. It does remind me something of Gone Home. I know a lot of people like to use the somewhat derogatory term walking simulator, but it's actually quite a useful genre description. A lot of people do not like games that are focused purely on wandering around the place as opposed to mechanical interactions, but then some people really do enjoy that, and it's a useful description. I don't think it necessarily should be a derogatory term. I think that's a game term that should actually be embraced. It's something that came out of the PC gaming scene, and it doesn't have to be a negative. It doesn't have to be a negative. I don't personally like games like that. I certainly hope that Tacoma has something more than just wandering around the place, because while I can appreciate, say, the art style of Gone Home and the design of Gone Home, the lack of mechanics, not so much. And don't get me started on things like Dear Esther, which I think are awful. Thankfully, Gone Home was a much better game than Dear Esther was. And Tacoma looks incredible, and the sci-fi aspect to it really speaks to me, but I don't know how it plays. So I guess we're going to have to wait for that one. Oh my, so onto early access for Xbox. They described it as a system called Xbox Preview. and they're launching a few games on it quite soon. Things like Long Dark, Daisy, Elite Dangerous. If that sounds familiar, that's because all of those games are on PC already. And the one thing that did strike me as a good idea is that each of these games will have a free trial period. So you can try it out, see what's up with it, and then decide whether or not you wish to invest in the early access version. I don't know, I don't really enjoy the idea of selling unfinished games to people. I wonder if it's going to work on console. I mean, this is a market that is definitely not used to this sort of thing. Even on PC, buying unfinished games even before the Steam Early Access system came into place was something that people did, and it was becoming a little bit more accepted. But console gamers really haven't been doing that, outside of the obvious joke that games release unfinished if they come from Ubisoft, howdy, and I'll make that joke till the end of bloody time, because it's right. But whatever the case, I think that this is going to lead to some developers certainly front-loading the experience, although Long Dark Daisy and Elite Dangerous don't suffer from that. We'll have to see what happens later on. But I'm somewhat concerned about it regardless. I still don't think it's a very good business model. I really don't. And we've seen plenty of reasonably high-profile failures and disappointments come out of early access, and I don't expect that to change unless we see a great deal of curation from Microsoft, which we might. You know, that might be the one thing that saves it. Steam doesn't really curate early access, and that results in all sorts of problems. Microsoft, I have a feeling they might do it a little bit more. Now, not to say that they curated, say, their indie section. They really didn't. But their main store, they actually put a decent amount of effort into quality control there. So that might end up working out a little bit better. We then got a short preview of Ion, which is from the DayZ creator Dean Hall. We learned basically nothing about it. A bunch of buzzwords and high-minded drivel is what I got from that particular presentation. It's like, yeah, we're in space. What do you do? I have no idea. All right, fine. The theme is the colonization of space, but exactly how you do that, well, that is a different matter entirely. That game will also be a PC release and is coming out on early access as well, by the way, so just bear that in mind. After that, we got a preview of Rise of the Tomb Raider, which looks like the other Tomb Raider game, just with a lot more snow in it. As we have mentioned previously, this is a timed exclusive, which is just dirty. It's particularly dirty when the franchise was not locked down in such a way previously. I imagine that people that enjoyed the remake or the remaster, reboot, or whatever the hell you want to call it, of Tomb Raider are a little bit miffed if they don't own an Xbox One, because they're going to have to wait for arbitrary reasons. I mean, that's all these timed exclusives are. A bunch of money was handed to this company, and as a result, timed exclusive. Yeah. Not a brilliant business practice. Not a fan of it. We don't know how long the exclusivity is either. That's the scary thing about it. It's coming out on November the 10th on Xbox One, but we don't know when it's coming out on PC and other platforms. Didn't really see a lot of combat gameplay, did see a lot of climbing around rock faces, which is, I suppose, what you'd expect from that. And it appears like it's got actual tombs in it this time. Yeah, I know, right? That was missing from the first one. Now, following that was a double whammy of happiness, I've got to say. They're doing what's called the Rare Replay Collection. It's got 30 games in it. That's a lot of value, and from a lot of different platforms as well. It's got Conker's Bad Fur Day, it's got Jet Force Gemini in there. It's actually pretty damn ambitious, honestly. Getting all of those games from multiple formats across multiple generations and putting them all into one package on modern systems is impressive. So, I mean, of course I'm looking forward to that. There's a lot of games that I didn't get the chance to play. I didn't actually get around to playing Jet Force Gemini. The original Perfect Dark, for instance. I wonder if I'll be able to control that a little bit better without that ridiculous N64 stick. But I don't know. I mean, it's still on a controller nonetheless, so maybe not. But it does seem like a really damn good value package. And then we found out that Rare's actually making another game. Yes, they're not dead, which is a surprise. I think that since Viva Pinata, most of us assumed that Rare had gone the way of the dodo. I recall being so sad when I saw them developing things like bloody Kinect Sports. Like, oh god, how far you have fallen. But hey, even though they lost a bunch of staff that went off to form Playtonic Games, they're making Yooka-Laylee, which is the spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. Turns out they've got the staff to make something called Sea of Thieves, which is one of these shared experience games. So possibly either drop-in, drop-out, or pseudo MMO kind of gameplay, sort of seamless. And it's a pirate sandbox of sorts. You have ships, you go and explore islands, get treasure. It's right up my alley, I can tell you that for a fact, although I have to wonder if they're going to have some of the more interesting strategic stuff. I have a feeling probably not. I mean, there's games like Sea Dogs and actually Pirates of the Caribbean on PC, and of course Sid Meier's Pirates that I absolutely adored because they focused on the strategic naval battles, things like trading, ship upgrading. I have to wonder if that's going to be the case with this one, but Sea of Thieves looks really kind of neat, and looks like it could very well be a return to form for Rare. It's a little bit heartwarming to see them come back, honestly. We did miss them. Alright, after that we had Fable Legends, which of course we already know was coming out on Windows 10 and Xbox One. It's free to play, which of course we also already knew, and it's got cross-compatibility and cross-play. So if you play on Xbox One, your progress will be held onto and you can use it on your PC and vice versa. You know, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for these asymmetric games, and there are quite a few coming out, like the Sword Coast Legends, which I'm pretty excited about, and of course there was that good old game Dungeon Land that I really enjoyed. So this is a 4 versus 1 title, where you've got one evil overlord and then 4 adventurers. I do like the look of it. It doesn't really look like a Fable game. In fact, it doesn't seem to have many of the elements of Fable whatsoever. So it's a little bit weird that they call it that. I mean, it would probably make more sense just to create a new IP out of it. But there you go. I'm fairly happy about it. I'll be playing it on Windows 10 when it comes out. Yeah, why not? Now, a bit of a surprise announcement. They decided that they were going to tell us about a partnership with Valve to make Windows 10 the best platform for PR. It was interesting, actually, because the Microsoft conference had quite a few mentions of PC. Like, they weren't hiding it away like it was some kind of weird, guilty secret of theirs that you could also play some of these games on a more powerful platform. No, they were actually embracing it. And there were announcements later on in the day, like the Gears of War Ultimate Edition coming to PC, and like Killer Instinct coming to PC, and things like that. It's nice to see them actually put some of their money where their mouth is rather than making token gestures. I recall their Windows 10 conference and be completely disappointed by that. I mean, there was so little there for Windows gamers. There was actually more here at E3, so I'm pretty happy about that. But they're going to be bundling the Xbox One controller, a wireless one, with the Oculus Rift. They also announced another weird, wonky feature where you'd be able to stream some games to Oculus Rift through your PC via the Xbox One. Just in case you wanted to add yet another chain to that ridiculous setup. Don't know what the hell is going on with that, but I suppose you can do it. I mean, it's a really wonky way of getting the Oculus Rift to work with the Xbox One. You would think they'd try to do it more directly than that. I don't know what the hell they're playing out there, but hey, there you go. Alright, after that they showed the HoloLens, Minecraft specifically on the HoloLens. They showed some really impressive stuff that has very questionable value. I will admit to being blown the hell away by seeing them put an entire Minecraft world on top of a table with augmented reality. That is the stuff of dreams. That's incredible. But watching it, I had to wonder, what's the point? I mean, it reminds me of when I first got a 3DS and got those augmented reality cards that you could put on the table and have like a big giant plank come through the table and stuff like that. That was really cool at the time, but it was also completely useless. Like, it served no practical purpose. It was a neat little gimmick. And HoloLens in particular really does sound like that. I've yet to actually hear a good explanation as to what HoloLens can offer gaming. And while this was very impressive and really blew people away, if you sit back and think about it, you have to wonder just how useful it is. I mean, do I really want to hover above a Minecraft world watching other people play it? Maybe not. I mean, do I need to have Minecraft on my table? Probably not. It does seem a little bit impractical, to say the least. I guess I'm just going to have to try one at some point. HoloLens is not a concept that I think has been well sold to people up to this point. VR makes sense. VR is something that people can understand. HoloLens is very odd. And it would be interesting to see what kind of game experiences would be properly augmented in a way that makes sense and actually adds to the experience. As impressive as that Minecraft demo was, I don't see it being something that everyday people use, or even hardcore gamers. It's a gimmick, at least as far as I can tell right now. I'm waiting for further explanation from Microsoft as to how this bloody thing actually works. Now, to wrap up the show, we got a double deal on Gears of War. First, they announced Ultimate Edition, which is the first Gears of War, which is coming out on Xbox One, so it's a remaster. It's also coming out on PC, as we are now aware. It's coming out in August, which is not that far away, August the 25th, in fact, and there is a public beta available on Xbox One right now, if you wish to try it out. They also didn't really make it clear as to whether or not this runs at 60 FPS in single player as well as multiplayer, because they said, yes, at 60 FPS and multiplayer. I'm like, what? Whoa, what did you say there? I'm certainly hoping it's going to be running at 60 FPS. Of course it will be on PC, but it's another remaster. I don't know if I hate remasters, honestly. They can't take that much effort, and there are some games that I certainly value being upgraded. When I'm forced to play a game on a console, something like, say, The Last of Us was a nightmare to play on PlayStation 3, but is a pleasure to play on PlayStation 4 because of the 60 FPS option. So if you're gonna do that, then I'm happy with it. If you're not gonna do that, then don't even bloody bother. It's like, oh, but it's made it more shiny. Yeah, you're just trying to sell us the same game twice. Now, I will buy it if you run it at a proper modern frame rate. That's something you can convince me of. But anyway, it's coming to PC, so of course it's gonna run at 60. And then we had Gears of War 4. Not too impressive. I mean, it wasn't exactly the big showstopper. I think this should have just finished with Minecraft, honestly, because I think anything that followed on from that HoloLens demo was a little bit of a letdown. This game looks like Gears. I mean, it looks fairly linear. I didn't see too many new mechanics. It looks nice, certainly. You know, it's a good looker. I was quite impressed by the way that the trees reacted to the monsoon in the distance. That was quite cool. Lighting effects weren't too bad, but ultimately it is Gears of War, and Gears of War to me is not that interesting a game. I've never truly understood exactly what the appeal was. It seemed like a fairly run-of-the-mill third-person shooter, and it also seemed to be the one that trailblazed when it came to those obnoxious waist-high wall level designs for cover-based shooting. Don't really like cover-based shooters. I prefer more balls-to-the-wall action, and you don't really get that with the Gears games. Oh, well, whatever. You know, I'm sure a lot of people really like it. It's not for me. So that was it. Conclusion, it was honestly a pretty damn strong conference. You know, they had a lot to say. They had a lot to show. It was a shame, of course, that a lot of that was third-party and coming to other systems, and in the case of things like Fallout, had been shown off better in the Bethesda conference. But it looked good. You know, there's a few exclusives on there that I'm interested in. I would like to see more of ReCore, of course, and Sea of Thieves looks really interesting. And it's really quite heartening to see things like backwards compatibility and mods for Xbox One coming to that machine. You know, it's all consumer-friendly stuff. So I'm cool with that. It wasn't a bad conference. You know, they kept the pace up. It wasn't too boring. There was the occasional part like EA Access that just made me want to switch off. But outside of that, it wasn't a bad conference. And the focus on games, like the laser focus on games, even more intense than last time. In 2014 and indeed, even at one of the conferences of 2013, they focused heavily on games. This time it was 100% games, and I don't object to that. I really don't. There was some good stuff on display there. It was not too shabby a showing from Microsoft whatsoever, and I do appreciate the nods to PC, and it looks like maybe, just maybe, this time they're actually doing what they said they would. I don't know. I'll wait and see. I've been burned before when it comes to Microsoft, so I'm a little bit gun-shy. Anyway, that's my wrap-up of the Microsoft conference. I've got more stuff coming over the next few days. I'm just digging through all of this stuff, watching all these conferences, doing these cynical redubs, which are obviously the little comedy videos, which you shouldn't be taking seriously, good lord. Some people got offended. Oh, of course they did. It's the internet. Who cares? Ladies and gentlemen, my name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.